So I'm going to just finish up on hybrid airships because when I think about winning today, it's the things we had to get done and we can't lose focus of, but at the same time, we need to make it so we're ready for tomorrow. One of the reasons that we've been able to take on the kinds of challenges that we've had is 10 years of war, lessons learned, constantly looking at ourselves. I told General Handy last night, you know, I can't tell you how proud I am to have been able to do this during this period, but the foundation was there. If it hadn't been there, we wouldn't be as successful as we were. And that was all built by folks in this room that have cared deeply about this for, 20, 30, 40 years. This has been your life's work. And so what this now means is that we can take this to a different level. And I will just say that, again, General Handy, as I think about fusion, I think about BRAC, I think about setting the stage, the relationships with OSD. I saw Don Stanton out there. I'll just say the way we have worked this together, the way we work with DLA, how we've just continued to look at ways we can do better, and then again, how we work with industry. So let me just talk very quickly about hybrid. Next slide. And joint high-speed vessel and hybrid are the two that I look at and say this is going to be things that if we do the right concept of operations, this will really give us additional options for the combatant commanders out in the regions. Hybrid airship, I'm going to talk about that right now. But in general, when you look at, speed and the cost per pound, it sits it's about 3 times as expensive as normal surface. It's about 1/3 of what it costs to do air. So it sits in a pretty nice niche. When you're talking, this is acquisition, this is also, day-to-day, this is how much it costs. So as we continue to work with industry and say, this might be something that would really play off well. And I'll give the 2 examples. Haiti is probably my best example. Our biggest problem in Haiti was to get the stuff from the ships to the distribution points. And the problem wasn't even coming in over the port because Crowley and Crimson both helped us huge in that. But our problem really came through how do you get it through the streets of Port-au-Prince? Security, but even more important, rubble, just trying to navigate tight areas. So if you can pass that and jump past that, you can imagine what a difference that would have made. Plus, it doesn't hurt to have, you can imagine having a hybrid airship with the big American flag that's helping the people, what a difference that makes. Every time I think about the comfort being there with that, beautiful white ship with the, the red cross sitting there, just what a symbol that sends. Well, here's that same thing. Think about Japan. What a difference it could have made if we could have been able, unmanned, having that go back and forth, being able to help with that, help with the nuclear disaster, and maybe that's dropping water on there or other boron powder or whatever we're going to do. But you can imagine what a symbol that sends when your infrastructure goes to hell in a handbasket after there's a tsunami. You don't have an airfield. You don't have roads. What do you got? So we use helicopters a lot, and helicopters are very expensive. Next slide. So one of the things that we promise industry is we'll work on how this fits in. We got air, we got surface. Well, maybe this sits in here if we do this right, that it gives you another tool and kind of changes the game. Cost, obviously speed is on the air, capacity on the surface, but when you think about this, maybe this fits in pretty nicely. So our guys, John Michelle and Michelle Johnson and now Sam Cox, have been working this very hard and then taking this and saying, here's how this might fit. Next slide. So I'll just say, it's not your father's balloon. We have to think of it differently. I did get to fly the Navy blimp. I got to fly that. So anybody else ever fly blimp? I kind of like this because all of my military guys go, I know they haven't gotten to fly blimp. So this is pretty good. But I'll tell you, it's amazing what you can do. And you really do start to understand, how this all plays and how intricate it is. But we really have some companies that have really started making breakthroughs. And this really starts paying off. Okay, next slide. So if you think about barges, when you think about their attributes, versatility, accessibility, durability, economical, they're not for everything, but where they fit, they become just really, really useful. And so this is a hybrid airship is much more like that. And it's not going to fit everywhere, but there's places where you put it in the right niche and it will be invaluable. So that's what as we think about this, it allows us to take advantage of the other ones, but then when it fits in this niche, it really makes some sense. Next slide. So we did some studies and basically said, okay, let's do a very short 200 nautical miles. We're going to do famine relief. We're going to use different assets and see how that goes. And here's your cost per pound to do that, to deliver it. Here's the airship. Here's a 130. Here's helicopters. You can see how expensive they are, the vertical lift, and then a 5-ton truck. And this kind of gives you dollars per pound, as you look out there, and you can just see, how this starts hitting a niche when you look at time. Next slide. But when you look at the time, this is where you really start making some money. So to do that, 2.5 hours versus 40 minutes for air, 13 hours for trucks, and about 3 hours for helicopters. But look at that cost on helicopters versus what it would be to do a vertical lift airship. You start making this make sense from an economic standpoint. Next slide. When you go to even further, it really starts paying off. So again, as we looked at this, same thing applies. When you look at the cost per pound of 1,500 nautical miles, next slide, and then you end up coming down and saying, okay, let's look at the time and versus the cost. You start to see that even at some pretty decent distances, this can make a lot of sense. So that's what we're working on very hard now, is try to figure out, okay, so let's talk even more about the ConOps. What's the ground maneuver, all the things that go into this. But we're pretty excited about this. Next slide. But why? Transformational capability, not a balloon. It's more like a barge. But I'll tell you, across the spectrum, we could fit this in. And there's a couple of ones that I would have loved to have it. And you think about going into Africa or one of these places where we're going to be able to bring in our large ships, but we got to get it into the interior of Africa. It's going to be a little dicey. If we have something like this, we can really make it pay off. So anyway, those are just gives you a feel for the kinds of things that are going. Next slide.